Hey, folks, you're going to love today's guest. Incredible couple, James and Angela Hollom. James, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us on, man.
Oh, are you kidding? I'm honored. James is a veteran. And of course, veteran's wife is is a veteran too. But behind every good man is an amazing woman. And my friend Benny Prophet will say, behind every good man is a surprise woman. That's kind of funny. But you know what, though? You are a good man. And
Well,
together
thank you.
you guys are a power couple with Set Apart Farms, a very unique organization and ministry for veterans. James, you are a veteran. You sergeant in the Marines for 12 years with
Yes.
deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. You served our country well. You're serving our country well now. But Set Apart Farms has an event coming up with John Rich of Big and Rich as a headliner and some other great artists as well. You're going to hear about that. But James and Angela, tell us how you got here with Set Apart Farms.
Wow. Oh, that's
Right.
that's a forged in fire kind of story right there. So we weren't just someone sitting back and seeing that there was a problem and seeing that there was a gap. We kind of got thrust right into the situation. I needed some surgeries that when I got out of the military, I needed some surgeries. We checked into the VA. Unfortunately, the VA didn't have the manpower at the time. They needed a specific orthopedic surgeon to be able to perform the surgeries, and they just didn't have it. So I ended up on a waiting list. That waiting list turned into 1 month shy of 5 years. So I'll give them credit. They at least didn't go to 5 year mark. It was 4 years, 11 months. During that time, I was kind of, they just alternated me between different pain medications, oxycodone, hydrocodone, to help deal with the pain. So, for 5 years, I mean, I wasn't fully there, and it obviously took a toll on the family.
Wow.
And then you fast forward to the moment I got to surgery, and 8 weeks later, when they pulled all the equipment off of me, there was a problem. They had botched the surgery, and I had completely lost the use of my dominant arm, my right arm, and I couldn't look left, right, or up and down. So that really put me in a situation where, Angie got thrown right into the full-time caregiver role. So she was having to take care of me. She had to help me get dressed, help shower me.
We were displaced at a facility that is not set up for long-term housing. And, as we talked to you more about this, we came to find out that there was no place that was actually set up for long-term situations for our veterans and their families. And so, as we were at this facility and our time was running out, we were coming close to the 7-month mark. We were still displaced, still fighting the system, still trying to navigate the VA, and still in need of other, surgeries and resources and therapies for James to get back what they had taken from him. And so that brought us out to Texas to try our luck, so to speak, here. A lot of things happened, though, between coming from Washington to Texas.
Right. So we kind of had to fall back on family. This is where I'm from. And during that time, so we had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. So Angela's raising a 2-year-old little girl, and now she's having to all of a sudden take care of me. I couldn't go back to work because I couldn't drive. I couldn't move my head. I couldn't do much of anything. And Angela couldn't go to work because the VA literally started me on about 11 to 13 appointments a week. And so
to try to figure out what they had done, basically.
Right. So I was a professional VA patient, and this lasted for 18 months.
Right.
Wow.
A little bit longer, but I mean,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
amount of time.
From the time I got the first corrective surgery to try to fix the issue, and then the second corrective surgery, it was about 2 years.
And so as we were going through this, clearly we searched our resources, both in private sector and within the VA. And like most people, when we talk about our journey, we were shocked to find out that there was no place in the nation that did long-term healing, right? We were looking at least another 8 to 12 weeks to, going into another 3 to 6 months, depending on what was going to happen. And they had great programs, for the family for a week, or they had programs to take the veteran out of the home, give him skills, try to put him back in. That wasn't going to work. I was his caregiver at the time. And so, we really noticed a lot of gaps that needed to be filled. And, by the end of this, God had put it on our heart from what we experienced, what we saw, what we fought against, to create what didn't exist. So we are a faith-based organization. I like to say that, but the ironic thing, maybe not to some, we were not faith-based when this started. I actually actually was a practicing pagan who spoke against the Bible, and I was speaking against Jesus at the time.
Wow. Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so my husband was fallen away. So we were not even on the radar for turning to God for anything really in our lives. But Bibles started showing up. Amongst all of this, people that were watching our story, people that even knew us and still knew our stance, still, saw the moment. This is the moment to get a Bible in, right? And so they were just coming. And so I read them. I'm a researcher, and I read it almost like I had never read it before. I read it like the case for Christ, right? I studied the Hebrew, I studied the Greek. I was out to prove that this, was not real. Clearly, just like the case for Christ. At the end of my studies, my husband baptized me. And I've been in the faith, and I have recognized God's presence in our life, even when I didn't know him. And I recognize his presence leading this to a larger fight of fighting to secure the family unit, because that is where our enemy seeks to divide us first. And so our program, and we can go over the 3 components in a moment, but our program is really faith-led and family-driven from what we experienced, and the input that God has given along the way.
Now, Angela, you said faith, blood, and family-driven?
Faith-led and family-driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
Faith-led.
I was about to say you are.
Oh, we get serious on the farm. Yeah.
By the blood of Jesus Christ.
The blood of Jesus covers everything in our program, but we're faith-led and family-driven.
Well, you know what? I'm very impressed. Folks, at the bottom of your screen, you've been seeing the information about this upcoming event, but our focus today is this incredible organization and ministry. You're going to see a lot more of it, and it's needed. Even in your frustration, you're still very kind when you're talking about your frustrations with the system. I mean, I think at one time, number one, is it safe to say, based on our conversation the other day, James, that there's plenty of help, plenty of grants for veterans who are strung out on drugs, but when it comes to veterans, wounded veterans that have a family, there doesn't seem to be hardly anything. If you're not strung out on drugs, and on top of that, I believe at one time a city shelter was offered for your family during your treatment. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's when we first started to see some gaps here, when we started to reach out to these other veteran organizations, because we really didn't know what to do. We're coming to the end. Our savings dwindled very quickly. We're literally about to be homeless. Like, well, how does this happen? What do we do? So we reach out to, let's say if we call 10 veteran organizations that day and explain the situation that happened, 8 of them automatically denied me because I didn't have a drug or alcohol addiction. Wow. And at first I was just completely baffled by this. I was like, this should be the other way around. If I was addicted to anything, if I had any addiction or dependencies on something, I would believe you'd be like, let's get you clean and sober, and then we're going to bring your family in and help you.
Right.
But it's not. It's the other way around. And thank goodness we at least had one lady that was honest enough with us and explained to us. She said, listen, the money is tied up in grants. We get a lot of grant funding, and that has to be spent a certain way. And you don't have a drug or alcohol addiction, so we can't do anything for you. So I thought it was odd, because I was looking on their website, and it's like, well, you offer 10 or 12 different things, but when you get down to the meat and potatoes of it, they barely scratch the surface on 2. I mean, it doesn't look that good on a website if you're trying to get donations for only 2 things that you provide. So it looks better to add a lot more. So that was the first problem.
Yeah, a lot of inconsistencies and half truths, even in program descriptions.
Right. So then if we did call 10, and the 8 that denied us because of no drug or alcohol addiction, if 2 of them said, yes, we can take you, I said, okay, great. How does this work? What do we do? My wife, I have a 2-year-old daughter. Every time their answer was, we're going to put them and enroll them in the city shelter. And I thought that's the best you got. That's what we're going to do.
Or I was told at one point too, if I would write a letter that we were living in the vehicle, that would carry more weight and they'd be able to go further. And I'm like, listen, I'm already fighting one system that I don't trust. You think I'm going to involve a second, like I'm going to involve Child Protective Services now, and now have to deal with, one system trying to pull my husband into a void and the other getting involved with my child. No, thank you. No, thank
yeah, that wasn't an option. And it's interesting. She just brought that up, because something that a lot of individuals don't know is right now, the number one growing demographic in veteran homelessness are those single mothers. They're veterans. They don't have a husband. They have children. Wow. And they're the largest growing demographic right now. And people don't know that. And that's the very reason, is when they go to the VA for help and say, listen, I lost my husband. It's me and my children. We're down and out. We need help. That's what they tell them to do. We need a formal letter stating, that you're living in a vehicle with your children, and then
Wow.
we're going to take this to the state and get you help. Those veterans, they've already lost everything.
Right.
That's the only thing they have is their children, and they're not going to write a letter
You know-
saying this is what's happening. So instead, they're living in a car or living in a tent, and we're going to change that.
And unfortunately, depending on what city you're in, the shelters can be dangerous places for
Right.
women
Yes, they
and
can.
children.
Yeah.
So it just is what it is. It's not acceptable.
Right.
Well, you know
And-
what, folks? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the biggest thing with all these other, what we kept finding was they kept wanting to separate the family. They kept wanting to separate. There never was anything that brought the whole family together as a unit.
To do the whole scope of services, therapies, and be on the same program, right? So when they take the spouse, a veteran out of the home and give the veteran all these great communication skills and the veteran's super excited and wants to come home and apply them. Unfortunately, the spouse, nothing has changed for the spouse except they've now picked up double duty.
Right.
And so they're not able to reciprocate these types of skills and resources that the veteran just got because it was not done in unity. So our program changes the dynamic of how veterans and their families heal together.
Absolutely. We heal them together as one. They keep leaving out half the ingredient, and that's the spouse. When those service members deployed and they went overseas and they may have gone through a traumatic experience, they weren't the only one to do that. The spouse was left back home playing both roles,
Right.
mom and dad, answering all the tough questions with the kids. Like Angie said, pulling double duties. They never knew if they were going to see that loved one again or not. That's a traumatic experience in itself, but the military doesn't recognize any of that. They don't recognize the family on the transition out. And so they really separate that family from the get-go on the way out. This is the veterans issue. This is that veterans problem.
Right, and that was my biggest mistake, was buying into that bag of lies, because it's not. I mean, everything that affects my husband, in a way bleeds over into my marriage and my family. And so to have that type of perspective that this is his deal, his trauma, his war, his therapies, it's not effective. It's just not.
Well, folks, you know what? I don't have to convince you. I don't have to coax you. I don't have to overtalk any points. If you love America, you love our vets, you're going to get behind Set Apart Farms. Something's unfortunately, it's totally unique. The concept, who thought of not putting a family in a shelter while their loved one is treated, psychologically treated for addictions, but instead, as the veteran comes back home and reacclimates to this culture, they also need to do that together with their families too. And so if you love the country, if you love the United States and you love her veterans, you're going to get behind this. At the bottom of your screen, you also see the flyer for the event. I'm not focused on the event, although you're going to see the flyer on it. It's already a success, guys. I hope it's a great turnout. I hope it makes a lot of money for Set Apart Farms. I'm looking at the long haul. You will have always started with headliners like John Rich and other people who also see the value in being involved in helping our veterans and helping our country. James, you're a hero for our country, and you and Angela are heroes for veterans in our country. And we salute you. We're grateful for you. Now, for those who want to say yes, 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 and obviously after this has been put together, you'll see how to give. What's the fastest way to get behind that? For those who can't come to Pasadena, what's the quickest way to support this financially? Where do they go?
Yeah, they're going to want to go to either our event website, depending what aspect they want to get involved in. Right now, what's great is there's two different aspects to get involved in. Like you said, the long term, and we'll talk about those three program components so that people that are interested in getting involved in the long term will see, the benefits both to the veterans and the community of long-term partnership. That you want to go to our nonprofit website, which is setapartfarms.org. And to get involved with the event, we still have time to do partnerships and some sponsorships. Set Apart Farms Festival. Sorry.
It's SAF, like Set Apart Farms Festival.com. Yeah, SAFfestival.com. And that'll give you all the information and get involved at the event. But setapartfarms.org.
Yes.
We have many ways for you to get involved, not just monetarily, because we want to bring the community into this. We don't want to be a secret society kind of veteran organization, because it's not just about educating our families and our veterans. We have to educate the community. Something that they have to understand is a lot of these guys, we had these veterans over there running and gunning with America's top 10% in combat. Now we bring them back here to the States and have them selling extended auto warranties. There's going to be an adjustment disorder.
Right.
Okay. It's not necessarily a PTSD problem, even where they're going to be different. It's an adjustment. And so educating the community on what the veterans are going through and what they went through and how they're able to adjust, and realizing that you're not always going to be like that. That's the thing we always hear in the veteran community is, well, you're different now. And their spouses are really bad about that, saying he's different, he's changed. Yes, he has, but he could be changed for the better. It doesn't always have to be like that. We don't push an AA style program where you're broken, you're always going to be broken. That's not true. I'm a perfect example of that.
Well, and we've also seen the power of what God can do if you're willing to invite him in your lives. That faith aspect is really something that's hard to put in words, but it's there and it's working for you. So if we have time to talk right now about the 3 components, I'd love to go over them really quick, just to give
let's do
people
that as quick as we can. The 3 components for those who want to get involved on the long-term level. What are they for Set Apart
And I'll
Farms?
make it super quick. So the first component is the farm aspect, right? Where we were at the facility, it was almost like a hotel. There were 12 other families. Everything was shared except your living space, which is not conducive to reviving your marriage and reconciling your family. So you have privacy, the families will have their own homes. They have the therapeutic value of the farm and really learning about God's good ways, or relearning about how important it is, as we've seen, especially over the last 2 years. What is going in our bodies? How does that affect our mood, our gut health, our relationships with people even? And really, providing a lot of education and resources on a mind, body, and soul approach. That's all happening at the farm. Friday family nights, Sunday spouse classes, lots of tools, resources, and education on how to revive your family in healthy ways with education. The second component is navigating the VA. It's a beast. We've learned how to do it, and we're going to help you learn how to do it also. And the third component is community and private sector. EMDR therapy, faith-based counseling, things that the VA isn't too happy about providing for us. We want to collectively change that as this program goes on too. But first we have to realize how these systems work in order to infiltrate them and make them work for us rather than working against us like they currently are.
Right. And with that community care, we're not just giving the benefits exclusive to the veteran. The family gets it as well. So if the spouse needs dental, we're going to get her into a dentist. We're going to provide this whole package to the entire family, because that is that veterans unit. That's kind of our, the small version.
And on the tail end, they get plugged into either vocational rehab for more education skills, or if they're ready and able to employment, plug back in. So it's a start to finish. When we left the facility after 7 months, it was goodbye. No transition. There was never a follow-up. No one ever called us to see, were you able to stay off the streets? And so we don't want that to happen to the families that work with us.
Right.
That's absolutely amazing. So many times I work with ministries all over the world, and so many times the best ministries are not always the well-funded ministries, or so much of the money does not even go to the very cause in which it supports. But in your case, and a very impressive percentage goes to the actual families that are receiving help, spiritually, physically, emotionally, chemically, and tell us about that.
So that was one of the things that we were seeing when we really started to get involved with some of these other organizations, and even try to work with them, saying, hey, you guys are missing an aspect here of involving the whole family. A lot of them kind of just looked over us with glossy eyes, like, who are you? We're doing good here. We saw where a lot of the overhead costs and operational costs were going. I mean, you have some organizations where their top 4 people are driving around $90,000 Ford Raptors, but their logo's blasted on it. We can house 2 families for a year on $90,000. We're not going to be that type of organization. So far, us being formed since 2019, no one's received a paycheck. We're 100% volunteer. We haven't reimbursed for travel. We haven't given anyone a salary. So anyone that's donating right now, all of this money is going into the account for the capital campaign for Set Apart Farms and going to help these families families in going for this event.
And what we also have is an additional element of, sustainability and revenue generating with
Yes.
being a farm, and being able to connect with farm to tables and farmers markets, and being able to produce some wellness products, different teas and herbs that are directly connected to healing inflammation, and helping veterans and their families along their wellness journey.
That's right. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create, even though we're a a nonprofit and we rely on donations, we can't solely rely on donations. We won't survive. So we brought an aspect to it that brings a for-profit back into the organization, and that for-profit amount helps cover all of the operational costs. So that way, when you're donating to these families. Okay, I don't need fancy travel suites, and I don't need a $90,000 Ford Raptor to get my point across to what Set Apart Farms is going to be about and what we're doing. As a matter of fact, we drive, we have 1992 Dodge Ram, D250 with a first gen Cummings in it. And it's a perfect representation of Set Apart Farms. We're not near as pretty as any of the others, but we're going to outlast them.
Well, and we're not here to be pretty. We're here to fight and get justice and get things back on track for families. When we were at the facility that we were at, we were able to help another family, an elderly family, where his surgery was botched and he was left paralyzed. And because, God was leading me, even when I didn't know it, to, again, use the system, congressional inquiries. We got one for her, and she was able to get stipends and modification on her home. And, God threw me a bone, so to speak, and it got me pumped. And I was like, listen, we can collectively create change and hold them accountable if we educate ourselves a little more and come together and refuse to just be walked all over by systems that don't work for us anymore.
Right. Yeah, just when I was
Very
feeling
powerful.
pretty low about my situation, thinking, how did I go on 5 combat deployments as an infantry Marine and come back with all my extremities, and being able to, as lucky as I am, a lot of other individuals weren't that lucky to walk into the VA and have them do this to me. And then, like Angela said, here was a Vietnam veteran on his own 2 feet his entire life, walked into the VA, got a surgery, and now he's paralyzed from the neck down.
Right. So it's not as uncommon as people think.
It's not near as uncommon as people think. And so that showed me in my situation, it can always be worse. And now that we've started this journey, we've really connected with a lot of families out there that are struggling in this kind of situation. Some of them are having to deny the surgery because they just can't take the time off and afford to take the time off to
right, or they're terrified of working with the VA, and I don't blame them. It can be a very frustrating, depressive, and aggravating cycle that just really beats you down. I mean, I was treated horrendously for years trying to get services and advocate for my veteran, and that has to change.
Absolutely.
I'm blown away, and I'm asking myself why this hasn't been done before. But I'm so glad that you're doing this. There are no accidents. There are no coincidences. There are no chance meetings. There are no such thing. David said to God, my days were written in your book before I was born. I believe that. That's what helps me
Right.
live a fearless life, a life
Yes.
without anxiety. I pray that for you folks. In the Bible, the word holy literally means set apart. And
Right.
here you have Set Apart Farms, something so needed. It's needed 100 years ago. And so here we are with Set Apart Farms and James and Angela Hollom. So grateful for your service. I'm excited for your event, but the event is just one element here, folks. For the long haul, you need to get involved with Set Apart Farms. You're watching this show all over the world. You're watching millions of households, okay, cable networks and over-the-air TV towers, and as well as Roku and all the digital platforms, folks. Some of you will see this years after it's recorded. It doesn't change a thing. Destiny has brought you to us today, and destiny has brought us together, James and Angela. I'm so grateful for what you do for the community. I have a feeling, though, that your reach will be far and wide beyond veterans. It'll be everybody. Your stories alone, things that you've seen. Angela, the fact that you left paganism to come to Jesus, that's big news,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah.
People are searching right now. This is a time when darkness has gotten darker, but the light has gotten brighter. We know that God did not come to save the Titanic. He came to save you off of it. And in the meantime,
Right.
we've got to take each other, and we got to support each other and care for each other, especially our nation's finest. Our nation's finest are our veterans and their families. Being a man in battle, James, you see probably more clearly than most people do, the spiritual war between
Oh,
light
absolutely.
and darkness. We are in a spiritual war. Our enemy is not hiding anymore. He fears no consequence. And there's a whole lot of people who, there's three kind of people in this country. There's people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who say, what just happened? Well, I make things happen. And
Yeah.
James, you and Angela, you make things happen too. So I'm not talking to the people who are in between scrolling on their phones and vicariously walking through life and enjoying the freedoms that have been bled for and died for. I'm talking for those of you who have a hearing ear. We've got to come together and we've got to lock shields in this hour more than ever for our nation, for our country, and our country is made up of people. So I'm very grateful. Can you guys hear me okay?
Now we
Now we
can.
got you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. No, it's all right. Technology is funny when you're talking about Jesus and when you're talking about the
I was
light.
gonna say you were just hitting on something very
Yeah,
good, or that
very
wouldn't
true.
have happened.
Well,
And
the
we really believe that he pulled us out of the muck and mire to go back for more. I like to say that James went from slaying to praying, because just like you were
wow.
saying, there's still a war to fight. Only the general that you now serve, he will never fail you, because he is not a man that he should lie. You still have an enemy out there, only now he seeks to devour and separate you from your family. And you still have people to lead. That is your family, which is your unit. So we are in agreement with you about the necessity to come together, both with physical understanding and spiritual understanding of what's happening to our families and in our country.
Absolutely. And you talk about the country, and if you're a patriot of this country, and we talk about the division in this country, we're so busy looking at the big picture of how do we reunite this country. Well, the division starts right here in our homes, and that is, and it's not just in the veteran community. I'm talking across society. When we can unite our homes, we'll have united communities, and when we had united communities, we'll have a united state, and therefore we'll have United States. So we have to start it on the small scale, quit looking at the big picture. And that's what the enemy wants, is division and fear.
Right.
With fear, you look in the Bible. Why does God tell us so many times to fear him and fear him alone? That's because he was smart enough to know that us as humans are so broken that we're going to bow down to our fears. We're going to allow our fears to rule over us. You see this in society now. You see it with COVID. You see it with masks. You see people's fear. So when you choose to fear God, all those others, like I tell these veterans, choose your fear. Choose what you're going to fear. Because if you
Wow.
don't make that choice, fear is going to make your choices for you. And when fear starts to make your choices for you, you're never going to be your full, the full potential of you and what you can as your family.
And with that fear over the last couple of years, we've seen the need, even more so than when we first initiated this, to understand how to care for yourselves and sustain yourselves with God's good ways, rather than relying on broken systems, and taking back our health and our faith.
Yeah.
You've seen a great ministry, an incredible couple, amazing ministry, Set Apart Farms. One of many times you're going to see them on these networks. Thank you again, James and Angela Hollom. We can't wait to see what's next for Set Apart Farms.